Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the conservation podcast. The show dedicated to exploring and amplifying the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and thank you for joining me for the first episode of Season 5. I can't believe we're back. I'm so excited. Yay! This season, we are celebrating the continent of Africa. We will be talking all about some of the incredible work that goes on across so many fantastic countries with some of the most wonderful guests that we've ever had on the show. It's so amazing. The biodiversity, the creativity, everything that we're going to be talking about, everything is just so fantastic. We're also going to be finding out about everyone's favourite underappreciated species. That's right, I ask every single person this question, and we get some really good answers. And we will finally get to have episodes about some of my favourite species. So we're going to be covering things like okapi, hornbills, and hyenas, which so excited for. Can you tell I'm excited for season 5? I don't know if you can. To kick things off though, there is only one species that we could talk about really, because of course, Africa is home to our namesake, the gorgeous, the wonderful, the magical, the fabulous pangolin. That's right, today I am joined by Charles Emogor, founder of Pangolino, to discuss his work with the scaly anteater that is so close to my heart. I'm so excited to finally be able to revisit this amazing creature, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to talk about it with. I really hope you enjoy, and I really hope you stick around because this season is filled with fabulous guests just like Charles. It's so amazing, and I'm so excited to finally be back. Because the series, it's great, and we're talking about pangolins and okapis and great things, so yes. But that's enough rambling from me, so without further ado, let's get started. And welcome back to the show. I am now joined by Charles Emogor, the founder of Pangolino, an organisation which is raising awareness and public support for everybody's favourite scaly mammal, my favourite at least, of course, what everybody's favourite mammal should be, the pangolin. Thank you so much for joining me today, Charles.
Thanks so much for having me, Jack. Appreciate this. I agree. I think the pangolin should be everyone's favorite animal.
Yes, yeah. It's just, no arguments need to be made to me about that. It's 100% correct. 100% correct statement. It's just, yeah, fantastic. And it's so fantastic, I think, to finally have an excuse to talk about them again. It's been so long since the podcast kind of started, and we did 6 episodes all dedicated to this wonderful little creature that kind of has gone on to change my life and change the trajectory of everything that I've done. And it's so nice to look back now that we have a series on Africa. We have an excuse to kind of revisit this creature now with you. So thank you so much for providing that opportunity. I'm so excited to talk about them. I wondered, just to get us started though, before I get too carried away with the pangolin chat, I wanted to know, I gave you a brief introduction there, but could you introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell them a little bit about you, a little bit about what you do, and yeah, just kind of what should they know about you?
I am Charles Emogor. I'm a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, and my PhD focuses on the white-bellied pangolin, one of the 8 species of pangolins on our planet. Based out in Nigeria, I do field work to understand ecology and why people are harvesting them and what the dynamics and dimension of that exploitation is. I also founded Pangolino to raise awareness of the plight of pangolins. And in 2020, I ran for 55 kilometers, 8 hours straight, one for each pangolin species, and to raise funds and awareness of pangolins and their conservation. So I'm pretty much a pangolin fan, and I can speak pangolin every day and night.
I love that. It also makes me feel bad. I sat in my flat during the pandemic and sat very comfortably still and talked to people. I didn't run anywhere. I should have. You put in the physical work alongside the like. You put your money where your mouth is with that one because yeah. I mean, I feel like I like a run. I don't know if I could run for 8 hours, but then yeah, that's very very impressive. I like that a lot. That's so impressive. I wondered like I think a question that I had for you just to get started as well was like, obviously with me, like I fell in love with these animals a bit later in my like I've loved animals forever, but I never really knew what a pangolin was until maybe I was in university and I kind of discovered them through my supervisor and like this world then kind of opened up to me. And I wondered like with you, what was it about the pangolin that kind of attracted you and pulled you in? Was it always a species you wanted to work with and like support, or was it something that like came out of the blue for you?
I think I would have known about pangolin when I was between the ages of 7 to 5, 5 and 7. I'm not sure exactly, but
Mm-hmm.
I first saw a pangolin on television, and I was quite intrigued by the animal
Mm-hmm.
because I'd seen similar sized animal where I grew up in Southeast Nigeria. I had
Mm-hmm.
a secondary forest just around my house, and I saw mashkin rats and porcupines, but I never saw an animal like a pangolin. And this was really unique. And, at that stage where you imagine what you see as a child is what the world is, right? The people you know and the people in the world. And so I just wondered why. And a few years down the line, when I was doing my bachelor's, I realized, well, even before my bachelor's, I realized there are pangolins in the forest, which is just about 30 minutes away from where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years later, I realized pangolins are actually the world's most trafficked wild mammal. These are the same animals I was fascinated about. I badly wanted to see one. I never saw one until 2020 when I went into the forest for my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
But before then, I'd seen quite a number of pangolins sold in wild meat markets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so interesting that like yeah you lot like were fascinated by this animal that you'd never, and I guess it's the same for me in a way that I was fascinated by something I'd never seen in real
Have you
life,
seen
but
one now?
no, I still haven't seen. It's like
Yeah.
I can't believe I've gone this far. I know like I'm just trying to find any excuse. Like every time I interview somebody who's from any country in which the pangolin is found, like when I interviewed the Giraffe Conservation Foundation because they're based in Namibia and like all this sort of stuff, every time they passively say like, "Oh, you should come down," so I'm like, I will be there because I need to see like, no, like I'll come and see giraffes, obviously, so interesting. But I am coming to
Yeah.
Namibia or somewhere at some point to see one because yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like this year my plan is the cheapest option for me to go and see them. There are pangolins in Prague Zoo. They've just had a baby there, the
Mm.
first ever born in Europe. And I'm kind of like, this could be the way. This could be this could be the finally like the union of like all of the other people around about me if they go to the zoo to see them
Yeah.
will not understand why this random boy is tearing up in
Yeah.
front of this thing. But like I need to go and see them and like actually have that experience because yeah, I've still not seen one in real life. I feel like such a fake fan. It's
No,
ridiculous.
no, 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 no. We're not judging you. It is ridiculously difficult to see,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're looking, right? That's, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, the golden rule of wildlife sighting. It's harder to find when you're actually looking for it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was really lucky to have so much support and a team and some financial and technical support to go find pangolins. And yeah, I'm very grateful for that. But I really think it's about the intention, and it sounds like you've got the right connections as well.
Mm-hmm.
You could be seeing the Temmings and white bellied in no time.
Yeah, I think so. I think I need to do it. I need to commit. I need to commit. Um
Yeah.
no, but before we start just spending all of my money, to move the conversation forward just a little bit, I was kind of like obviously I love the pangolin. We've done 6 episodes all about them. So there's all that information there for people who want to go back and listen to that. But I guess from your perspective, if somebody asks you like what's an what's an interesting thing about the pangolin? What's something that like people don't maybe usually know or takes them by surprise that you like to tell people to make them kind of like, wow, like amazed by this creature. Like, what do you say?
Wow, it's so hard to pick, isn't it?
Yeah.
um, just a few. The this is quite a technical one to start with, but the genus for pangolins, that's Manis,
Mhm.
is derived from the Latin manes, meaning ghost or spirit of the dead, which is an acknowledgement of the just secretive and very nocturnal habits, which and just very skilled appearance, being the only mammals on the planet.
Mhm.
And so I find it really interesting because even in my experience, finding pangolins is no easy feat. A pangolin could be within a few feet from you and they go by and you don't even notice. We've almost had that before. It's harder to find a pangolin in the dry season. Sorry, in the rainy season when everything is wet and
Mhm.
you don't have the crunchy sound of the leaves. Pangolins really go by, and I think just relating that to some biology or rather taxonomy, manis and being called that, which translates to Latin meaning manes. Which also means spirit of the dead is just and ghost is just very exciting. They're elusive
Mhm.
animals and they really show that.
No, I didn't even know that one. That's a really that's I love that. That's so interesting. That's so interesting because yeah, I feel like these animals they have so many nicknames given to them
Mm,
by so many different people, whether it be like walking pine cones or whether it be kind of like all of these different things. And so, yeah, I love that one. I like that's an actual nickname or not nickname. That's a naming thing based in fact and like interesting
yeah,
things, not just cutesiness. That's really
exactly.
interesting. I like that. That's really really cool. I feel like you're probably filled with those types of things though. Like I feel like we could sit here and just fill an hour of me asking you to tell me interesting things like that. Um, no, that's fantastic. That's really, really interesting. I might come back and ask you some more interesting things, for more interesting fun facts like that later on. Um,
Right.
but for now, I guess like what I'm really interested in is like you don't just kind of research the kind of pangolin kind of for your PhD. You've also founded an organization all kind of focused on them and raising awareness about them and kind of doing, yeah, kind of important work to kind of make sure people know about this incredible, incredible animal. And so I wondered, could you tell us a little bit about Pangolino? What is it? Where did it come from? Like, yeah, just tell us a little bit about the organization.
When I started my PhD, and I still consider myself incredibly lucky, but especially when I started, I was so excited, and I still am excited about the prospect of seeing a pangolin in the wild,
Hmm.
and my field work and everything that it entailed. I spoke to most people that had no idea what a pangolin was. I still think most people don't know what a pangolin is,
Hmm.
um, but and then I decided when I go out in the wild, when I go out to the field, I will try to get some media engagement around my project just to raise
Hmm.
awareness, let people know what pangolins are, just for starters. I'm not a very big social media fan. I have Instagram and all the, Twitter and Facebook. But that's all I had, and I really needed to use those platforms. And so when I saw the first pangolin, or just going into the forest to find a pangolin and doing the research and everything, I would upload have those things in my Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and just to get people to get the conversation going. And then I had some really good feedback about how, just from people that I knew, people that I did not know, that found it really interesting and were intrigued and wanted to know more. And so I thought, you know what? The public is interested in pangolin conservation much more than we know. And because people think pangolins are cute, rightly so, they are
Hmm.
very attractive. I could harness this, public power, and get people interested, and we could merge science and art.
Hmm.
And so, what Pangolino really is this very fluid space where the public, for the most part, does all the curation of art
Hmm.
and the content to raise awareness of pangolins. And so we believe the more people are engaged, the more interested they are or will become, as opposed to us doing all the stuff and just feeding people. We get them engaged, and not just online, but even having like talks to primary pupils and students, and really working with institutions as well, like the Nigeria Customs Service and other NGOs on the ground, and rather NGOs on the ground to raise awareness of pangolin and their conservation, and as much as we can, just like make it less awareness raising, conventional awareness raising, but just making it a bit more fun. And this was, birthchild my PhD, but also really inspired by COVID and the lockdown, and thinking about being creative and thinking about new ways to approach a problem.
Yeah, that's yeah. I really like that. Is that something that like because I feel like sometimes like conservation gets not stuck, but it sometimes gets like there's very classic ideas and spaces in which conservation kind of exists and how it should be, and
Mm,
like was it always something that you wanted to do and kind of bring in these creative elements? Like, were you a creative kid? Like, were you into like
mm.
bringing in different types of expression of conservation, or is it something that just kind of came to you as you kind of came into the project?
No, I don't consider myself a creative kid. I yeah, I think I only have made one painting of a pangolin,
Hmm.
and it was sketched by a friend. So like I mean, I could try to draw a pangolin now, but I will struggle. So
Hmm.
absolutely not. I love the art though. I love music, and I love
Hmm.
art, especially abstract art. But I
Hmm.
don't think I was really into them, and I never really conceptualized bringing that into conservation until my experience around sharing photos and videos from my field work and getting feedback from people, and just thinking about how we could we could engage the public beyond people around pangolin range areas. We can engage people in Cambridge, for example,
Yeah.
who unless they're intentional about it, may never see a pangolin, because pangolins don't exist in the UK. But these people are also very excited about art and stuff. So
Hmm.
even the schools on the ground in Nigeria around pangolin habitats, we do the same thing. We go down there and we talk to them about pangolins, but also talking to them about pangolins feels very normal. I imagine they get like
Hmm.
so many people come and talk to them about so many things, especially when we have the slot at the end of the day and everyone is tired. But when we bring in the creative element, we really see the pupils and the students resonating with that and
Hmm.
engaging much more.
That's amazing because it's like yeah, it's one of those things that art and being creative. It's like not a there's not a like the artwork that is created will be very different based on where you are kind of from and the way you see the world and all of the skills
Yeah.
that you have and all of these things. But art as a concept and being creative as a concept isn't gatekeepable. Like anyone can be
Mm.
creative. Like so it's interesting to kind of hear. Do you find like this is kind of I hadn't written this down, I hadn't prepped you on this, but I feel like it's an interesting question. I'm gonna have to ask it. Is like,
No
do
worries.
you find that like the art and the like there's a difference between the way that people engage with it between maybe Nigeria and like the people you interact with here in the UK? Is there a like like can you tell it means different things to them, or it's the stuff that they produce is like very different? Like what is the difference there between the two audiences, I suppose? Like
Well, I mean, we have people from all over the world, mainly,
mhm,
not just the UK. We've got art from across Europe, even the US and Canada,
mhm,
and I think even Russia. Um, Obviously, Russia's Europe, but also split between I think, Europe and Asia. So,
mhm,
there's quite a broad spread, and I think I haven't noticed any spatial difference, but I think rather whether or not what stands out is the talent. When somebody makes a pangolin, you can
mhm,
really tell if you're maybe a professional or an amateur, and all of that. So yeah, you can see all of that coming out. But what I really love, my favorite, is actually the people who would make a pangolin and like make a very disproportionately long tail or very long tongue. It's not,
mhm,
it wouldn't pass for a pangolin unless you told somebody that was a pangolin. Sometimes it looks like a crocodile, for example, but that's great. We don't need we
mhm,
don't need the professionals of. I mean, it would be great, to get the professionals as well. But we want everybody. We want the people who are learning how to make art to try out with pangolins, right? because they're cute. There's so many things. You got the scales, really nice to paint on. You got the tongs. You got and you can make a pangolin walking on four legs or on two legs, which is very cute as well. So yeah, there is a variety there, and I mean on the website pangolino.org, you can find so much on the Pango Gallery, which is just a selection of art from around the world.
There is, and it's also like, yeah, it's fantastic, and it's amazing to see the different styles and the way that people have done it, and the way that, yeah, it's filled, like, yeah, the website is filled with so many fantastic things. So yeah, everybody needs to go. If you're not driving while you're listening to this, if you're in front of a screen, Google it right away. Go and have a look and see, and like have a scroll through while we're chatting, because there is so much good stuff up there that like it's so interesting, so interesting, and beautiful and fantastic, like really amazing. Um, I guess, and also while you were talking, it reminded me of like the first time I had to try and explain to somebody what a pangolin was, and like showing them an image, and like even with a picture. So I'm holding nothing against the images that look like crocodiles, because even showing my friends pictures, they were like, "So is that like a reptile, or is it like, so is
Yeah,
that like a lizard, or is it like a
yeah.
like?" Because it's this weird like they don't look like anything else. So I mean, mine would if I was to try and draw one now, it would probably also look like an alligator or something. So yeah, no, it's fantastic. Really interesting way to kind of like engage people actually, and get them kind of thinking about the species and how different and unique it is. Kind
Mm,
of, yeah, I guess, like, yeah, as well, because when you're drawing something, you really have to understand the form of it, and you need to understand the way that it is and the way that it moves a little bit, so you'll gain all that sort of, it works, this works on so many levels. I'm really like, I hadn't thought about it until right now. I should have thought about it more, but like that's such a clever way of getting people to really think about the animal, and what it
yeah,
is. um I guess the other part of the awareness raising, though, is not just getting to people to kind of appreciate the animal for its beauty, but it's getting people to appreciate the animal in terms of the situation that it finds itself in, which is, as we've talked about on the show before, and as you mentioned, like, it is the most trafficked mammal in the world. It's endangered for a number of reasons, with kind of habitat loss and climate change and trafficking, and all of these things come in and feeding into kind of the the struggles that the pangolin kind of faces. And the question I wanted to ask, I guess, is quite a big one, because there are a number of these things feeding in. But what do you think kind of the biggest threats to the pangolin are today? And I guess then, how does Pangolino kind of inspiring people with this kind of artwork and like the different awareness raising things that it does, how do you try and tackle those issues? That's a big question.
yeah,
But I guess, like, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
yeah. So it is hunting
Mhm.
or poaching in places where it's illegal,
Yeah.
and perhaps overhunting, um, and fueled by international demand. But in and something we didn't establish here, but I reckon people who are familiar about pangolins would realize that we know that pangolins are found only in Africa and the continent and in Asia,
Mhm.
and so this um, these places have quite different. The dynamics of the threat is quite different on both continents.
Mhm.
African species are increasingly being trafficked to feed Asian demand, where it's used for tradition, scales are used for traditional medicine.
Mhm.
Not so much of the meat there, but what literature suggests is that the number of pangolins in Asia across the continents have declined. And because of that decline, there's now an outsourcing of African pangolins to feed that demand. But on the continent of Africa, in most places, most countries, most localities, pangolins are consumed as meat as well. So pangolins form the general wild meat consumption, where meat from the wild, basically, what people will call bushmeat, is consumed. And so, in some places, pangolins are harvested for meat, and the scales are stockpiled and shipped along. In some places, pangolins are mainly harvested um, for the scales, and perhaps the meat is a byproduct of that harvesting for scales, which is sent to sent abroad to Asia, places like China and Vietnam, but mainly China, where there's high demand for pangolin skills for traditional medicine. So what Pangolino does is, because there are pangolins in the Cross River National Park in southeast Nigeria, we work with the local communities. We work with the students, as I mentioned earlier, raising awareness in a way to change behavior or encourage pro-pangolin behavior from an early age. But also, we work with the broader community. So we've distributed T-shirts, we've had like film screenings and movie nights and all of that stuff in broader communities. Obviously, not in all the communities, as much as we can, which is I think about 12 communities
Mm-hmm.
selected randomly. Actually, not selected randomly, selected based on geographical quadrants, just to increase coverage as much as we can. And so we go
Mm-hmm.
there, we talk about the plight of pangolins, and we identify hunters and help them understand why they hunt, collect data actually systematically, but also when we're done with that, feedback to them, give them information about why pangolin hunting is quite different from, say, porcupine, for example. Not to
Mm-hmm.
say you should hunt more porcupines, but well, you could actually in Nigeria because hunting a porcupine, if not done in the national park, is not illegal. But just making that comparison in a way that they understand. Say, pangolins give birth to, on average, once or twice a year, but for porcupines, it's much more. And that vulnerability, that low fecundity, speaks about the vulnerability of pangolins, or the fact that when you see a pangolin, you can actually run after it or even walk and catch it. But a porcupine is so fast and it can get
Mm-hmm.
away. And so pangolins are more vulnerable. And these are things that the hunters know. And so when you say these things, they know it and they connect the dots. I mean, it doesn't mean they'll change immediately because sometimes hunting is just more than it goes beyond just killing an animal. It's about
Yeah.
survival. It's about sustenance. So we hope that with additional support and perhaps a more systematic and more inclusive in terms of bringing the communities together and telling them about the reason why they shouldn't hunt and providing alternatives. There will be a change. But as much as we can right now, distributing souvenirs, notebooks, posters and T-shirts to different people, students and adults in the communities, and just raising awareness and trying to and hoping that raised awareness, increasing knowledge about the threats and plights of pangolins will um, foster pro-pangolin behavior.
Mm. Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's a really interesting way of doing it, of kind of like going in almost with that knowledge of like, we're giving you this information and you can do with it what you. We're not going to tell you what to do, but it's, if once you have it, you can then take the information and hopefully that will make an impact on your life for the adults, and hopefully, I guess, with the younger generation of kids that you're talking to, if you raise awareness in them when they're younger, as you say, it will for like kind of foster this love and this pro pangolin kind of behaviors of kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess. By pro pangolin behaviors, do you mean kind of just kind of like respecting them more? Is that kind of the gist of like, and kind of not hunting them, or is there other things?
Well, I guess yes.
Yeah.
No, it would be not killing them, right? Not killing a pangolin, because I guess the potential worry is that in places where pangolin poaching is for sustenance and just for food, and the scales are then a byproduct of that, wild meat offtake, there is a potential there's a potential switch in future where people could then be targeting pangolins, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really guarding against that as well because you don't know when that's going to happen. If it's going to happen in some places, that's the case where pangolins are mainly harvested for international trade, and that really speaks to the value of pangolins. That really would it's like mobilizing people against pangolins, and so we want to try to
Mm-hmm.
mobilize people for pangolins before that ever happens, if it does.
Mm. No, that's really interesting. Really, really, really interesting. Actually, that's, yeah, that's, it's fantastic, and it must have led to kind of like the way that engaging with all of these people and trying to get them to think about these things in this way. It must have led to some, like, it must have been really hard at times to try and I don't know, try and like convince people, or maybe disheartening at points if they don't fully get the message you're trying to put across, or they can't change their behaviors necessarily at this moment. But there must also have been moments of kind of like great achievement and great pride in what you've done. And I wondered, like, what are some of the moments that you kind of felt, I suppose, proudest of? What were the things where you were like, yes, we've done this and it's been a huge success, or we've done this and like there's you've seen it in the kids' eyes, or suppose like this love blossoming for, but like, what are those moments that like
Yeah.
really make you proud of what the work that Pangolino is doing?
There's been quite a lot of moments, but I think I'll group them into two categories. One is just
Mm-hmm.
the engagement, the public engagement. You know, the people that I have met, the people I haven't met, the people, you know, the public from different places,
Mm-hmm.
including the guys on the ground who are really attentive and helping out. Pangolino is a volunteer based organization where there's so many people contributing to pangolin conservation who are not paid, even the people who are helping facilitate that. And the other one is just, on a maybe about 3 or 4 times we've received phone calls when people had seen pangolins in their communities,
Mm-hmm.
or had captured a pangolin, and some other person comes and say, "Oh, we don't think you should kill this pangolin, but we can,
Mm-hmm.
let's call this person and tell us what to do with it." We've actually come and collected about 3 or 4 times, collected live pangolins that would have ended up dead, and we released them into the national park in Cross River. So this is these things that happen in communities where we've raised awareness and say, don't kill pangolin, pangolin poaching is bad and all of that. And to really see that happening, to see that increase in behavior change, increase in knowledge leading to a pro-pangolin behavior is just phenomenal. That's what we're all
Mm-hmm.
about. And these moments, one or two or three sounds really small, but it's just great to see something.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing, and those are the moments where you're kind of like, oh, we did, like, we had a real impact, and clearly something has sunk in with that person, that like they have seen this and they know how to act to protect that animal. Like, that's so fantastic, and I can see exactly
Absolutely.
why. Yeah, and that's hopefully then it's the start of the ball rolling in
Mm,
terms of the wider community. If they see their friends or their family calling these things in, and they all start to, like, people start to realize, oh, okay, like, there's a lot of worth to these animals and a lot of value to them as kind of living wonderful things as part of an ecosystem.
yeah.
And if we just make this phone call, or we just leave them be, like, it's such a positive thing. That's so fantastic, and that's, yeah, that's exactly what you want to hear, I guess, is the people kind of who are being impacted by that. That's amazing. That's so fantastic. Um, yeah, that's brilliant. I guess, like, I I was gonna move on and chat about something a bit different. But before we do, I kind of, something that I didn't write any questions about, but I feel like is actually probably really interesting. You might be sick of talking about it because I'm sure everybody who meets you asks about it. But like, what is your like? So is your PhD work entirely now focused around this kind of awareness raising, or what is it your PhD is kind of focused on now?
So the awareness raising is a side project, Pangolino's a side
Yeah.
project, and all the other stuff that we do with local communities on the ground. So my PhD could be divided into ecology and social work. So for
Mhm.
ecology, I went into the forest, tagged a few pangolins to understand home range size, what they do, how they interact with other pangolins in the landscape, and also to understand occupancy, the factors that determine where pangolins occur in the national park. It could
Mhm.
be, say, for example, pangolins like to be around streams, or they like, as we would expect, places with a higher density of ant hills and ant mounds in cases where they're not selective or they're generalist feeders. And then on the community side, I work with hunters. I've been monitoring about 30 hunters more than 2 years now, understanding what they harvest on each trip, how frequently they go, and that includes pangolins, where they hunt pangolins, and all of that.
Mhm.
Also been monitoring the food consumption of about 88 households in 4 communities. So understanding the meats that they consume, what's wild meat, what's domestic animal, what's pangolins, and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. and also monitoring wild meat market, similar period, more than 2 years, just understanding what's been sold and all of that contains pangolin. So the idea is to piece out, get pangolins, understand pangolin consumption, understand pangolin harvesting, understand pangolin sales from this three data set, and really try to paint a picture. It's going to be really site specific,
Hmm.
but it's going to be very important in understanding next steps because there's so much we don't know about pangolin, especially the local dynamics of local consumption and use.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is like, especially like once you have a model, I guess that works in one specific area, like it is
Yeah,
then more easily replicable. I
yeah,
guess if you were to take it to other areas and say like, obviously the communities will be different, the way that they view the pangolin or whatever may be different, but
yeah.
if you can study it in a similar way with like similar kind of like, okay, well we've got these kind of measurements now that we can look at, that's actually probably going to create a really important, interesting, excellent toolkit that somebody else, even if it wasn't you, could pick up and say, okay, well, we can use this model somewhere else now, and maybe across borders, different countries, different situations. Like, could be a really interesting project. That's so exciting. Is there? I guess like, is there anything you've noticed? I mean, until it's published, I know like you can't really say like, oh, it's definitely this. But like, is there anything you've found out that was unexpected or really interesting or kind of like has really surprised you? I guess.
It's just the idea that pangolin hunting it's not driven by external demand. It's driven by the need for food
Yeah.
and I guess income, but it's mainly for
Mhm.
sustenance. That is quite apparent. We've seen that across different data sets so far. And one of the work that I already published for my PhD looked at the international Nigeria's role in international pangolin trafficking, and you could
Mhm.
see Nigeria playing a huge role. And we tried to quantify how many pangolins were involved in that pangolin trafficking.
Mhm.
How many pangolins would have been killed to produce the scale that was trafficked, and we estimated about 800,000 pangolins over about a decade. So that's an astounding number, not just coming from Nigeria, obviously, because some of the shipments came from neighboring countries in
Mhm.
Western and Central Africa. But to think about that number of pangolins killed for international trade, and realizing that that is really an underestimate because what is confiscated accounts for a very small percentage of the overall
Mhm.
trade. It's just mind blowing.
Mhm. That. Yeah, it must have been a hard thing, I guess, to come to terms with. Is kind of, yeah, your work will have a positive impact in the long run, but coming to terms with that short term, like,
Yeah.
oh, that's what's going on now. That's the scale of the problem. It must have been a really hard thing to kind of work out in and kind of deal with, I guess, in your head. But it seems like you're pushing, like it seems like you're putting all of your time, every single waking moment of your time into like trying to solve it. So I feel like it can't have been that demoralizing in terms of like its impact on you. If
Right.
anything, it's
Yeah.
encouraging. Yeah, that's fantastic that like you've, yeah, I guess like kept going and kept pushing through. That's amazing. But yeah, I guess I have so many more questions that I feel like I could ask. I guess like, so are you close to finishing your PhD now? Is that you almost, or how far through it are you now?
Yeah, just a couple of months. I should be done in the fall.
That's exciting but scary.
I know.
Like, no, that's what we'll have to have you back on once you have all your results and once everything's worked out. I want to know like all of the different. I'll read all the papers and then I can come. You can come back and I'll quiz you on all of the details and things. Even though you'll probably be very sick of talking about it, but no, that's fantastic. I guess like, yeah, I suppose like I've asked about achievements, I've asked about the PhD, I've asked about all sorts of pangolin related things. And so I guess like there's a couple questions that I'm asking everybody this season that we can kind of move on to, because there's some kind of, the series obviously is about African kind of conservation stories, all kind of about conservation in various places with various species and various different methods of kind of doing it based on the continent of Africa. And so I wondered, aside from the pangolin is the one stipulation I'm going to put in, because I've asked, when it's a
Mm-hmm.
species specific episode, I ask people not to pick their own species again. But like,
Mm-hmm.
aside from the pangolin, like, what is an underappreciated African species that you would like to shine the spotlight onto?
Ooh.
I know it's a tricky one. That's it. Everybody always
No.
goes, "Oh,
Because there's a lot, right?
yeah,
I want to say bats, but I appreciate, it's not just one species here, it's just bats in general. And that's because of the persecution that are faced in some African communities that I know of.
hmm
But the importance the bats play in our ecosystem cannot be, overemphasized. I also want to talk about like pygmy hippos because I love pygmy hippos. I've never seen one. And I guess not just pygmy hippos, but also hippos. Um,
hmm
I appreciate a lot of people, have a thing against them because they're really vile and can, they're very deadly. But hippos are really engineers, right? The role they
hmm
play in, just getting that ecosystem balance as well, being amphibious is just amazing. Sorry, I think I mentioned two already. I can get on and on and on.
no, I love it. Like, I feel like it's no. I want to ask about. I want to ask about them all, because especially pygmy hippos, they are they're so charismatic and they're
Yeah.
so fantastic. Like, they're such an interesting creature, and I feel like the big hippos, especially, like, they do get a lot of attention, but they do kind of have
Mm.
that kind of, like, yeah, I guess there's kind of that edge to them of, they have this almost, I guess, maybe I'm trying to think of like a good thing to compare it to, but I can't even, like, maybe the hippos, I suppose, maybe have that kind of like the giraffe problem, where everybody loves
Mm.
giraffes, so they assume giraffes are, there's loads of them, they must be fine, but
Oh
actually,
yeah,
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 there's their numbers are decreasing. So I feel like hippos probably are in that same boat of like,
yeah.
everybody loves hippos, or everyone's interested at least by hippos, so they probably have that same kind of like, oh well, we don't need to conserve them, but actually the important, especially I think of the pygmy hippo, is so important, so important. I want, so what is it, what about the hippos, pygmy or full size, what is it about them that like draws you in, like what is it about them?
It's the pygmy. They're what? They're about half the length of the regular hippos.
Mhm.
Just to think, a, an adult pygmy hippo is an adult hippo, as opposed to
Yeah.
the young of a the young of a hippo is just incredibly nuts.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to really spending some time trying to find them. I am intrigued. I am drawn to pygmy hippos, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of, just like you talked about, because um, a lot of people really don't know about pygmy hippos, and some that do know just think, oh, they're doing fine as well. But pygmy hippos are really doing badly.
Mhm.
And so, shining a spotlight on pygmy hippos, do what you can to, raise awareness about them and help support conservation organizations. Um, I'm trying to protect them and increase your populations if you can, because pygmy hippos are quite different from regular hippos, which are also not really doing so great recently because there's been for a couple of years now, but quite relatively recent, a trade in hippo teat. And so, that is not. I don't think that is really will have any good impact on hippo's population in the long run. So,
Mhm.
yeah, hippos are hippos are great. Hippos are cute.
Yeah, and it gives, yeah, honestly, any excuse to talk about hippos, I will take it. So that was an excellent choice. And I guess, like, you kind of talked a little bit about bats when you first mentioned. Do you
Yeah.
want to talk, like, is there, why were bats the first thing that came into your head? What was it about the bats that kind of spoke to you?
Well, just so nuts that, without bats, we wouldn't have tequilas, right? That's like some very nut fact. I'm like, but even places where, people don't drink tequilas, or places where, or people who don't take alcohol and all of that, bats are just great. So much to
Mhm.
do with, pollination and really seed dispersal and all of that. But I think bats, it's not like I don't know. It's not like I don't know. Bats. I feel like I can compare bats with hyenas in a sense that they play really good roles and really get things in check, but people don't
Hmm.
like them just because of how they look or because of how
Hmm.
media has portrayed them. Hyenas, for example, Lion King, hyenas. Everyone's like
Yeah.
hyenas are ugly. I love hyenas. And yeah, bats also fall under the same umbrella. And that's why, whenever I get a chance, I'm like, shout out to Bats. You guys are great. You're doing an amazing job. Love Bats. But I also realize in places it's not just a personal choice, it's a cultural thing where
Hmm.
bats are believed to be associated with witchcraft or voodoo and everything like that. So bats are they're intentionally persecuted.
That's yeah. It's a strange one because they play such an important role, but they have that PR issue almost of like they they have this evil kind of all of these connotations in so many cultures across the world as well, not just within kind of
Yeah,
African species. Everywhere you go, there is this kind of connotation that a bat is a bad thing. It's like
yeah,
and yeah, I feel like the importance of them is underrated and understated a lot of the time. Of like, they are fantastic, interesting things.
yeah,
If you give them the chance and go and look at them and learn about them, they're
yeah.
fantastic. So no, that's really interesting and a solid pair of choices. I think I'll let you away with picking two because they were both such excellent choices that people can go away
Thank
and
you.
learn about. And you'll be glad to know because you mentioned hyenas there. We are going to have a full episode about hyenas this series. I don't know.
Yes.
I haven't decided the order of the episodes, so it might have already be out. It might be coming out soon. So listeners, look
Right.
forward to that. We have a whole episode about hyenas because I feel like they have the biggest PR issue of all of the African kind of
Mm,
carnivores. If you talk about
mm.
lions, leopards, and hyenas, I feel like the Lion King maybe is a major problem in that. But like, yeah, people
Yeah,
seem to find them and they seem to not have the same, I guess, charisma as others. But I think they are
yeah.
just as charismatic and
They are
interesting. So
very charismatic.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're going to be having a chat about them soon as well.
great.
Um, I guess like the next question that I have, almost the last one is it's a question that I've asked almost I think every guest that's ever been on the podcast, and it's what advice do you have if someone's listened to this and is feeling inspired or like they want to do something for the pangolin or for conservation in general? Like, what is your advice for people who want to get more involved?
I think you should look around if you want to get involved in conservation. You should look around and realize that nature dwells within you. Nature dwells around you. There's so much urban wildlife now, and then because of I guess expansion of cities, there is more and more of that. We should stop thinking so much about nature being this thing that exists in particular places on particular continents or particular areas in our society, say national parks. It's great, but before you get a chance to go to those countries, before you get a chance to go to those parks, you should begin to imbibe and really appreciate nature from the butterfly you see. Try to ID it, from the bee that stings you, hopefully not. Try to ID it, and really just going beyond just appreciating it as some very charismatic and aesthetic part of life, but something that could draw your attention much more and could be a
Mhm.
gateway into ecology, for example, understanding interactions between animals and plants and landscape and humans and all of that. I really think starting where you're at
Mhm.
is what I don't think a lot of my generation did, and I don't think I did that a lot. But I was actually lucky, to be honest, growing up in places where I saw so much of nature. I saw so many wild mammals,
Mhm.
especially the small ones, and I think we could be doing much more.
Mm. I agree. I think yeah, we see the birds and we see the kind of like yeah, we see all sorts of stuff like that's around and kind of in the space, but we don't necessarily appreciate everything that's there, all the things that are a bit more hidden away and the things that maybe are less kind of put in front of us. So yeah, I really appreciate that advice. I think it's fantastic. And I think leaves us all with like a lot to think about. Once people are finished thinking about hippos and pangolins and stuff, they can go away and they can think about what's around them and what they can do to help what's around in their areas as well. That's a really good piece of advice. I guess then that brings us sadly almost to the end. The last thing I'm going to ask is there anywhere like listeners can go to learn more or like to keep up to date with your work? Where should they go if they're intrigued and want to yeah, hear more about what you do and keep up to date with any updates?
Oh yeah, for sure. Look up Pangolino. That's a pangolin with an O, .org. And I think there's a lot of resources out there. There's the Pango Gallery. There is the Pangolin Quiz, which is also very exciting and fun. So you get
Mm-hmm.
to select a few hypothetical pangolins that best relates to you and your character and all of that stuff. You can share with friends. And you can also follow Instagram and Twitter and Facebook if you have any of that, and just to keep updated about what's happening in the life of Pangolino. Chat to somebody about pangolins. You may have already done that. This is the first time perhaps knowing about pangolin, but don't bottle up all of this joy to yourself. Chat to a friend. Be generous.
Yes, exactly. Share the love of pangolins with as many people as you possibly can. Find them everywhere you go. And even people who don't know they love pangolins yet,
Yeah,
go and tell them about it so they find out. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I'll put links to like the website and all of the social media and stuff in the description for the episode so people can go down there. They can kind of find out all of the information and kind of, yeah, just kind of follow you and do all that sort of stuff while they're down there. Um,
perfect.
yes, and that kind of, I guess, brings us to the end. So all that remains is for me to say, while they're down in the description, they can find our social media down there as well. So we're at Pangolin Podcast on all sorts of things. So go follow us, keep up to date with the show. This season is going to be all about African species and African conservation stories. And so, yeah, we're covering things like hyenas and rhinos and hornbills and okapis and climate change and music and all sorts of really interesting projects. So please make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, so you don't miss out on any of that as well. You can also leave us a nice review and you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. The links for all of that will be in the description of this episode. And I'm at the only Jack Baker on Instagram and at only Jack Baker on Twitter. So you can keep up to date with the show on there as well. So, all of that out the way, all of the cheesy promotional stuff, I just want to say a huge thank you, of course, to the listeners for paying attention and listening for this long and kind of nerding out about pangolins with us for this long. So, thank you so much, listeners. And of course, Charles, thank you so much for all of your time, all of your work, everything that you've done to kind of support this species that means so much to me and so much to all of the listeners I know as well. So thank you so, so much for all of that and for all of your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jack, for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And I guess until next time, thank you so much everybody and goodbye.
Bye.